Calm down, I told you, there's fire and fireworks. Hi everybody. Well, as you can see, it's showing the baboon with the red ass. This entire submission is what me and Mike like to call red ass specials. So let's get into it. First book up is X-Men Annual number 14. Second appearance of Gambit. Boom. Nice. Right out of the chute. Perfect. And I got two of these, so let's see how we did on the other one. Sorry, it's a little awkward doing this by myself. Mike was tied up. So we get another copy. Survey says. Nice. Great. So like I said, Mike did a show in Buffalo and then he's getting ready for the ECF show in a couple days. So he didn't have time to do this unboxing with me and I need to get these ready for the show. So here we are. Anyway, next up is X-Men 282. First appearance of Bishop. These are all clean. These are all from my collection when I was a kid. I bought all of these off the rack. And some, like that annual there, I bought two. I was really into a kick for a while of buying a ton of books at a time. One for me, one to save. So how did we do on this one? Boom, great. Really neat. That's important with this book because, as with most moderns, if you don't get a 9.8, the price drops drastically. I mean, you're lucky if you can get your fees back if you don't get a 9.8. This is awkward. So I had another one. I think I had four altogether. Survey says, ooh, another 9.8. Great. All white pages. I expected that. I bought these and then immediately put them away from the sun and the hot temperatures. They were in a closet probably for close to 30 years. So I didn't really get much exposure or anything. So this is another X-Men 282. And let's see. Boom. Oh, a 9.4. Well, that's not good. It's so weird when you look at these, you really can't see any difference at all. It would be interesting to look at the grader's notes on it. I will say though, and they shipped those 5 in here because it's 25 in a box now. So now we'll get on to these. I think as long as I figured out, as long as I got 198, all 4 that I submitted, I was going to be fine. So 9.4 is a little bit low, and just mark that one accordingly. And that's probably somebody's favorite character, somebody's favorite book. And at the ECF show this weekend, July 7th and 8th at the JCC here in Rochester. So I'll put the information down below, and if you want, you can stop by and see me and Mike, and probably a lot of other dealers that you've seen if you go to Comic-Cons up and down the East Coast. So, let's see here. Make sure I got this lined up right. Oh, Power Pack number 1. So I grabbed this one because I figured sooner or later they're going to do something with that character. Survey says, boom, 9.6. It's pretty good. I was hoping for a 9.8, but I didn't pay a lot for that book, so. That one I did buy, I think when I first got back into collecting in 2013. This is awkward. I'm gonna turn the box around. That's better. Oh, this is a good one. So Miss Marvel, number 18. It's the first appearance of Mystique. Now this was, look at that. I'm holding the wrong side. So a 6.5. Pretty good. Overall happy with that. I got this out of a collection from a guy that was moving out of town. And he went to a couple comic shops and they were basically, from my opinion, trying to rip the guy off. So I priced him out and I made him an offer and he was shocked and more than happy to get it. I see why they knocked it down now. That back there has a lot of staining on the top. So this was from this guy's collection that he grew up with as a kid. And what was kind of neat about the collection, and I have some of it for sale and some I took out, whenever he would go somewhere with his father, him and his brother, I think was 1 or 2 years older than him, they would go into the drugstore and he'd let them each get a couple comic books. And it was funny is how often they bought the exact same comic book. And I could tell which were his and which were his brother's, because his were a little bit more tattered than his older brother. And it just reminded me of my brother and I when we used to do that, because we used to collect separately. And I remember we were probably around, I guess I was around maybe 8 and he was probably 10. We started collecting together, but we did the same thing to where we had the same issue. I can think of the comics in my head right now. We both went into the drugstore and we both liked, say, Iron Man, and we both got the same Iron Man comic book. So it was funny to see the collection that this guy had, because it was very similar to what me and my brother went through. So kind of cool. And it's fun to tell people the story when they come and look at the boxes when they're looking at the books. So, I did it right that time. Oh, here's another one. This one I had for quite a while. I had about 5 or 6 of these, and I sold all of them raw at shows over the day, over the days. This one is a direct copy, so probably not as valuable. Let's see what we got on it. Boom. Wow. Much higher than I thought. I thought this was going to be a 9.2, 9.4 at best, but Mike cleaned and pressed this, so obviously he knocked it out of the park again. Boy, growing up I always wanted that motorized Lego car. I don't know if any of you got it. I got the helicopter and a few other ones, but they were hand cranked. I did never have the motorized one. My cousin had it though. It was pretty cool. That's great. Very happy with that. Let's see here. Next up. Oh, so now this is a semi-controversial cover. This came out during Assistant Editors Month, I think they called it, where Marvel kind of just did some goofy stuff. It's obviously for its material, is why it's collectible, and it's why I have it. And I figured, well, I may as well slab it to see what kind of condition it's in. I was hoping for at least an 8.5. I think we're close. Boom. Nice. That's really great. Really great. It had a lot of... you can see finger bends in it from when someone had read it. And typically when I look at either raw or if I'm looking at a comic book that's been, slabbed, CBCS used to be, you could get or you still can, you could get the grader's notes pretty easily just by scanning the QR code in the back. And then fairly recently, CGC started to do that. If you put in the code, you can do the same thing on their site. So a lot of times if I'm looking and I see finger bends or what's the other term they use? It's basically, it's just a little bit of grime on the cover. That's real easy to get off, and that's what I look for whenever if I try to get a slab that I'm going to crack. But these were all raw, and all of these books were available at my stand at the booth that I had, probably for at least 4 different shows. So these are all truly Red Ass specials. So that book in particular, I had it priced raw like a 7.5 and 8.0. So that was quite a big difference in price, and obviously it's going to be different now. Here's the 4th one. So let's see how we did on the 4th appearance. Boom. 9.6. Okay. So that's good. I mean, it's better than a 9.4. The 9.4 is still shocking to me. I'm going to definitely look up the grader's notes on that now. It's being is that it's not that high dollar of amount of a book, really. I mean, even a 9.8 I don't think is much more than $100, but I'd just be interested in seeing what the difference was and why that happened that way. Okay, what do we got here? Oh, so this is X-Men 134. That's the first appearance of the Dark Phoenix. This was all part of that kind of a long saga where the Hellfire Club was involved, and Mastermind kind of was corrupting Jean Grey's mind, and it kind of screwed her up and unleashed the Phoenix, or the Dark Phoenix. What did we get? Oh, 8.0. That's great. So this one I got as a kid. I used to get subscriptions, and they used to come in like a brown paper bag, like you used to get groceries in, and it would just fold it over once, and that was it. Top and bottom were wide open, and sometimes they came in, they were pretty nice like that, and then other times they were pretty roughed up. So it's great that was out of my collection and it turned out like that. Okay, first appearance of Dazzler, which is issue 130. I got this the same way. So let's see how this one did. Now this one, I remember it had some pretty good dings in the corner, and I was lucky that they didn't break color. So let's see. 8-0, great. But I tell you what, that's the nicest 8-0 I think I ever saw. I guess there's that little mark in the back there. And I can tell you that right about where that is, that would be where the fold of the brown paper would have been on the old subscription packaging. So, all right, off to a good start. All of these really are gravy for me because I bought all of these raw. None of these were bought as investments or anything. Oh, so this is X-Men 120. Now this one I did buy raw last year at Heroes Con. Right at the end of the show, there was a kid in the back, and he had a booth, and I don't think he did much business. So Mike and I went in there, and I think I spent over $1,000 at his thing because he had a lot of books that I wanted. So this is one of my grab. I figured this is probably an 8-0, maybe a little better with the press. Nice. 8-5. Beautiful. I just picked up another copy this year that is pristine. I'll be surprised if it is in a 9.2 to a 9.6. Let's see what we got next. Oh, Web of Spider-Man. So I think a half a dozen of these. I have one for my PC, but I also had a half a dozen, and I picked the nicest one out. And I wanted to see if I could at least get a 9.6 on it, and I think this one had the best shot at it. Wow, awesome. My 9.8, that is great in this book. That might end up being, this might replace my other one. Typically I like if I get a high grade, I sell it and I keep the lower grade, but in, copper and modern books, I try to get 9.8s if I can, just because they're very common. You should be able to get one that way, but I don't know, we'll see. I might put it out to show. That might be somebody's favorite book and might be cool for them to get. So this is She-Hulk number 34, and Demi Moore did a cover very similar, so only she was pregnant, and this is kind of, I don't know if it's more of a satirical or an homage. Either way, I know it's a very popular cover with collectors, and John Byrne, just really good artwork. Anyway, let's see how we did on it. Boom, 9.6, great. I was hoping at least get a 9.6. I think the person I bought it from had it listed as a 9.2, so very happy with that. Very happy. Great. We're about half done, kids. Well, this is an older one, because I can tell it's got the great Jack Davis artwork on the back. Oh, Iron Fist 14. So this was also in that collection from the guy that was moving out of town. He worked with my wife, and he came over, and I looked through his stuff, and I pulled this one out right away, and I told him this one is worth more than what that dealer offered you for everything. So let's see how we did on it. I looked at this book, and I thought it's probably a 6.0, but it was hard to tell because he said he remembered he loved this one. Him and his brother read this thing repeatedly. I was hoping for a 6.0. And it's pre-press, it was probably a 4.0. So, oh, nice, 6.5. Great job. Might crush that. All right. Well, those were the two big books out of that collection. So, there was a bunch of other little minor keys. Some that I hung on to for myself, but most of them I've been selling at the shows. So they had early bronze is what it really was, and that was one of the last books that they bought. Almost everything was 15, 20, and 25 cents. So Invaders number 7. I love this one because it has a really cool date stamp on it, which once they got into the 80s, it didn't seem like they did that anymore. And this is from July 1976. I collected the Invaders, and I don't remember getting this one. It's a great Jack Kirby cover. It's the first appearance of Air and Blood, and I think also it's Union Jack. It's his first appearance too, so really well done. I bought this from that same kid at the end of the show last year, so I was hoping for an 8.0. Let's see how we did. All right. Nice grade bump on that. And of course, Mike cleaned and pressed most of these. Or at least pressed them. I cleaned most of them before I sent them to Mike. I think I just showed you guys the grade, but I didn't see it. So this is Hulk 228. Now, interesting about this, I had this comic book. I bought it off the shelf, actually off a drugstore, and we went to the beach when I was a kid. We were driving home, and I don't remember, my mom had packed up the car and laid this in the back window, like on the cars used to have like a sill in old sedans. and I remember the windows got opened, and before I could turn around, I started to turn around, I saw it swirl, and out the window it went onto the highway, never to be seen again. So I do have a couple copies of this, but every time I see this cover, I think of that ride home, and just, you know, I was half asleep, and that instantly woke me up the second the window opened. I remembered, oh my God, my comic's in the back, and then it wasn't. But the reason this is important now is that's the first appearance of Moonstone. There was a Moonstone in Captain America earlier, but it was a male character, and she later is part of the Thunderbolts. So I thought I'd pick this one up. It just looked really clean, and I just grabbed it just kind of on a whim, but we'll see. I was hoping to get at least an 8.0. We'll see how this one goes. Hi-yo! Wow, a 9.2, great. It's funny to me is this doesn't look as nice as that 8.0 that I got earlier. But never can tell. I think there are so many graders now. I think there used to be, I want to say Nick said 6 teams of 3 for most of the time at CGC, and they must have at least double, if not triple that now, because they're turning around modern submissions in less than 30 days, which is, you know, screaming fast. So after this show, I have probably another 60 books I'm going to put in if they don't sell at this show. So it's definitely another opportunity for those of you to get out there and get those. So this is just another one. It's the first appearance of Quasar. I had this book, geez, this is probably, I think I had 4 or 5 of these, and there was some speculation on that character, him right there, for a little bit, and the book kind of took off, so I turned him loose. But this was the last one I had, and it was kind of scrubby looking. I had it priced like a 6.5. I figured Mike could knock it up a little bit for me, so let's see how he did. Nice! Wow. Great. That's a beautiful 8.0. These are all perfect, you know, perfect grade if you're building a bronze collection. Not too expensive. Even the bronze books, when you get into the, you know, 9.6 and above, they're pricey for even run-of-the-mill books. Now this one was kind of a gamble. It was super clean. It's Captain America 192, and it's the first appearance of Carla. Well, I always want to say her name. Sofin. Anyway, she becomes Moonstone. So this is before she became Moonstone, her first appearance. So it's I guess minor or the B-level key, I would call it. We'll see. I mean, if the Thunderbolts takes off, then I think that all changes. But I thought this had a shot at a 9.2. Bang! Even nicer, 9.4. That's great. I always hated this cover as a kid too, because it's just a psychiatrist beating up Captain America. It always bothered me when I was a little kid. And then this is the Look Who's Smiling Now guy. Remember him? So that's the third one that I remember seeing. This guy's probably got a shot still being alive. Not the other ones. All right, what do we got next? Oh, so this is just an iconic Jim Lee cover, X-Men 268. I see this a lot of shows, and down at Heroes Con I noticed, you know, 9.6s, 9.8s or something for quite a bit. So I thought this had a shot at a 9.8, at least a 9.6. There was one minor bend along there that I noticed. We'll see how it turned out, if it got it or not. 9.6. Still good, not great, because I think a 9.8 selling for close to 200 bucks. Oh yeah, it's still there. So there's a stubborn little crease there. Typically when that happens is if it's sitting in a rack and people are looking, pawing through books, they bend them, and then right where the metal support is for the comic rack is right where that gets bent. And it really kind of forms a curve, so it's more than just a spine tick. Really stubborn to get out. It's a great cover though. It's one kind of pretty early on in Jim Lee when he was still drawing at Marvel. But I thought I'd throw that one in too. So that's what most of these are. I just went through my collection at the end of the show and said, well, these ones deserve to get CGC'd. No one bought them after 2 or 3 shows. I see a few spine ticks on this already. It's the first appearance of Mr. Sinister, 221. I had about 5 of these as well, but when that speculation took off, that book raw was selling for well over $200. And a couple of the ones I had that were closer to, I think, 9.8s, I sold for over 3. So I did good on them. So this is, again, this whole submission is gravy, really. I figured this one had a shot at like a 9.4, a 9.2 worst case. Bang! Wow, that's great. It's a great cover too. And then pretty cool ad on the back. And of course that comic book, the annual, came out, and in one cover it had Peter Parker, and the other one he was dressed as Spider-Man, which was kind of cool. I have both copies of it. What do we got here? Okay, now this is from my private collection, my personal collection. I have lots of copies of this. Boy, I see a bad, like a kind of a, this kind of a thing often happened with strings, or when they were getting put into the racks, they would hit and they get the dent, and you'll see it a lot on the top as well. When the comics used to come, they used to call them string copies because they would be bound this way and that way. So whenever you go to the comic shop, you always wanted to kind of grab in the middle and pull out. So I never used to have a reserve list, even as a kid, because I didn't trust they would pick out the good copies, and I was a pretty finicky little kid. Boy, this came nice and clean too. I remember cleaning that. That was a pain in the butt. I had a lot. My comics always had a lot of stacking smudge on them, and that's when they stack over time and they kind of shift around. You pick up ink transfer from the cover it's laying on. But this, I figured maybe a 7.0. I read it a lot of times. Nice, 7.5. All right, and it should have its partner in here, which I know was in way worse shape. So this was 141. These are Future Past, and really it's one of the last of the three. So it was 141, 142, and then 143, which was the Kitty Pryde Christmas issue, which was great. Reminded me a lot of Alien. This one though has a really bad stain on it, and I remember when I got this one, it had that stain on it when I walked down the driveway. I remember taking the brown sleeve off, and I looked and I'm like, oh. And when you're a kid, that's it. There was no such thing as returning the marble. So this one I figured was a 6.0. With the stain, we'll see. But I mean, boy, Mike really got this looking great. It looks as nice as that one. It's got a stain on it. So maybe a 6.5. Bang, nice. That's just a great cover though, isn't it? And the cool thing is about this story, it wasn't like it let up. The story before this was kind of the aftermath of the whole Dark Phoenix thing, and Jean Grey getting killed on the moon and all that stuff, and Cyclops quitting, and you know, all that stuff. And then bang, this issue came out. It was just like, you know, you didn't know. I think the Wendigo issue was right before that, where Wolverine put on his, I think it was the first time he wore the brown and tan costume. But it just shocked you. You weren't expecting it. Oh, this is the first appearance of the White Queen, X-Men 131. Just another pretty clean copy. I have a whole box more of these that this issue's from. All very clean. I figured this had a chance at an 8.0. You never know though. Now that I look at it, it's got a little bit of a bend there. It's not color breaking, but it's still there. Overall clean. It does really a couple color breaking spin ticks, so I could see anywhere between a 7, maybe an 8.5 at best. 7.5. Okay. I was hoping to get an 8, but that's all right. It's a very old comic book, and I've already sold the majority of that collection. So, okay, this one's a fun one. So, me and Mike were just going through boxes. I think it was Saturday last year at Heroes Con, and I came across this book, and I remember it as a kid. It's actually a really good story if you've never read this before. Well, obviously you can't now unless you want to crack it, but if you see this laying around like in the reader bins or something, just pick it up. It's a fun story. The artwork's pretty unique, and it's Alice Cooper, so kind of weird. It has that in it too, which means this started its life as a newsstand, but the distributor needed to get it to you know, the direct market, so that's when they ended up doing that line through it. At Marvel at the printing press. So let's see what we got. I figured this is at least an 8.0, maybe a 9.2. Oh, wow. 9.4, that's great. All right. I think I have another one of these too that I bought on eBay not that long ago. So see what we end up with that. Maybe I'll have a choice there. Oh, so that it looks like this is going to be the rest of these. So I sent in 4 of these, and I remember when this came out. It's a Barry Windsor Smith run, in Marvel Premiere, or Marvel Comics Presents, and it was kind of the whole retelling of how Wolverine started out, and when he was up in Canada and what they did to him. It's a really good series. You haven't read it. I think it's 8 to 10 books. I don't remember. I have all of them, but this cover is the first one, and it's just really great. Great Barry Windsor Smith art. And I figured I'd send them in to see what we get. I figured they were all at least 9.6s, so I'm hoping to get at least one 9.8 out of them. I got 4, so all right, 9.6. About what I figured. I figured they're all 9.6s at a minimum. Some of them, though, you never know, because they were in my boxes. As people, they're not always gentle when they're going through your stuff, so we'll see how we did. I mean, a minor tick on these modern books, they really treat harshly, so. Again, that one looks pretty clean, so we'll see. Boom, 9.8, great. It's a little bit better color. Funny thing is, I remember when I got these, I used to do a mail order from a company out of Eden Prairie, Minnesota, I think it was. And you just got a little, folded over Xerox copy notebook, and it wasn't much different than your pull list these days, and you just marked off which ones you wanted. And they did a really nice job of pulling the books. I got pretty good books from them. It ended poorly. They basically closed their doors and they didn't tell anybody. So your last month order you didn't end up getting. And I wrote back and forth with them, and really radio silence. They didn't say anything to me. And then I got a hold of somebody in Minnesota to find out what was going on with that. And as I was waiting for that letter to come back from the Minnesota State, I get a box and I open it up, and it was like double what my order would normally be, and that was random weird stuff. But it was kind of cool that they at least made an effort to make good on it. Anyway, this is the third one. How'd we do? We already got 9.8, so that's all gravy. Bang, 2 9.8s. Boy, that's great. Extra gravy. Let's see what we got in the last one. Again, this is gravy. Hopefully it's at least a 9.6. How'd we do? Zingo! All right. Great. Well, yeah, I see why. Very, very minor. There's 2 tiny, tiny little marks. They're not color breaking, but they're still noticeable. So I see why this got a 9.6. It's funny, is all 30 of these books had white pages, so that I think maybe a couple of the old ones didn't, but that's pretty good. I did do a good job as a kid of keeping them that way. I will say though, I always carried everything with me, so I can tell when I submit my other books. They usually don't get better than an 8.0 because I did read them and several times, and I enjoyed them. But that's great. What a great stack. That turned out great. I'll make sure I let Mike know that he did really awesome on these. So I think that's pretty much the last of the moderns that I'll be submitting, unless I buy some new stuff, because I have mostly all slabs and Silver Age and pre-75 keys. CGC did away with, or they consolidated one of their things that they call vintage now. So it's basically anything older than 1975 and below 1,000, because I think once it gets up to $1,000, you have to submit it as a standard order. So really happy about that though. These turned out really good. Not as much banter, I know, as when Micah and I are here, and the ads on the back of these aren't as exciting to talk about. Like they were just advertising their own books, and these came out right before, to me, comics kind of went where I kind of got turned away. I stopped collecting in '93 until about 2013. I mean, here and there, my kids or somebody would get me a comic book, or somebody for Christmas would get me some comic books, but for the most part, for 10 years, or 20 years actually, I didn't collect. So most of this stuff sat in boxes, little white boxes, all sealed up in a closet on the second floor of 3 different houses. And then 2013, I got them out and I started collecting again. And when I got back, eBay didn't exist when I stopped collecting in '93. Plus, I had a lot of disposable income because I was older, and I just went crazy on eBay, I remember. And I'm sure I've said this story before on this channel, but it was just so easy to get stuff. You used to have to go to these little cruddy, VFW shows where, you'd have a bunch of card tables and surly old guys that maybe had some old beat up comics, and you didn't care about condition, and they were never boarded. They were bagged, but they were those gross polyethylene kind of slimy bags, and they'd stick together, and everything always had that comic bend in the corner because they would slump in the box because there was nothing to support them. And then there was always baseball cards at the same show. So if you saw something, you just had to get it. And when eBay came out, it was just an opportunity to go out there and really go nuts, and I did. And I still was a completist back then. And it was probably around 2017 that I realized that I didn't get as much enjoyment out of completing the runs anymore, because it wasn't as hard. You didn't really have to hunt. You could just click, click, click. Like I got the entire run of Captain America, volume 1 through volume 7, probably in about 3 months. And it just, once I finished it, I remember I got the last issue of volume 7 run, and it just was, I started reading them, and I'm like, the artwork I wasn't impressed with, and I didn't think the stories were great. But then I started realizing right around that time too that the stories, most of them back then, at least, I can't speak so much now because I don't read so much now, but stuff in the Bronze and then in the Copper Age really wasn't written for adults. So I really got more into the cover art, and then I realized I don't need every single issue to enjoy collecting anymore. So 2017, I started selling off the bulk of my collection. I think I had 30 some long boxes and 23 short boxes. And excuse me, my collection now is down to 4 short boxes. I do have one really big box, a wooden box that I keep all my PC personal collection slabs in. So about 4 or 5 boxes, all fits neatly in one little closet, and I'm perfectly happy. I read a lot digital, and then I also like trade paperbacks. So I typically buy trade paperback, and then when I set up at a show, I'll sell them for like $1 or $2, so someone else can have them. And I have a whole bunch of those at the show too. I have a whole box full of creepy and trade paperbacks and all that stuff that I sell pretty cheap, just so other collectors can get their hands on them and read them. I don't think they really have a ton of value. So anyway, it's exciting. That's my unboxing for you. Thanks for stopping in, and we'll see you on the next one. Remember, love what you have, not what you want. You'll be much happier. Thanks. See ya. Oh yeah. Don't be that. When you see it, buy it.